They say the Grand Canyon holds secrets deeper than its own vastness, mysteries lost within its labyrinthine cliffs and shadowy corridors. My name is David Wilkes, and I've spent years exploring forgotten paths and hidden trails, but nothing prepared me for what lay hidden in the depths of this legendary canyon. It began with a faded photograph I stumbled upon. A man named George Kincaid, posing confidently near a cave entrance carved into the canyon's towering walls. The year was 1909, and Kincaid claimed to have found Egyptian relics nestled within the heart of the Grand Canyon. Experts dismissed his claims, institutions mocked him, and history brushed him aside, leaving him an outcast. But destiny often plays by its own rules. After my father passed away, I inherited something peculiar. Kincaid's journal, a worn and fragile book filled with cryptic symbols, meticulous sketches, maps, and dire warnings. The pages whispered of ancient Egyptian treasure guarded by an unseen force, hidden deep within the Grand Canyon's shadowed crevices. Night after night, I decoded Kincaid's notes, becoming lost in the mystery that had consumed him decades ago. His writings guided me toward a cave concealed among the stark cliffs of Grand Canyon, describing a place shrouded in secrecy, guarded by an ancient curse. Kincaid himself warned that he barely escaped with his life, leaving behind knowledge and treasures he deemed too dangerous to retrieve. Unable to resist the pull of discovery, I set out to find the cave. The journey was punishing, blistering heat, precarious trails, and hidden dangers, but determination drove me forward. At last, beneath the merciless sun and amid the echoes of an eternal silence, I found it, the hidden entrance exactly as Kincaid described. Approaching the cave, an unsettling chill enveloped me, despite the canyon's oppressive heat. Strange symbols carved into the stone shimmered faintly, their meaning lost to time, but their presence undeniably potent. It felt as though unseen eyes watched from within, guardians who had waited patiently for someone brave or foolish enough to disturb their slumber. As I stood before that enigmatic threshold, anticipation mingled with dread. Behind those darkened stones awaited truths that could reshape history or plunge it into deeper shadows. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, ready to confront the mysteries concealed within the heart of the Grand Canyon. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air thickened, as if I had stepped not into a cave, but into a different realm altogether. The light from my lantern flickered uneasily, casting long shadows that danced across the stone walls like ghostly memories. The passage twisted downward, narrow and steep, carved by tools far older than any native to this land. The walls bore inscriptions, hieroglyphs, faint, worn by time, but unmistakable in their form. Ankh, scarab, the Eye of Horus. The same symbols I'd studied in museums halfway across the world, now staring back at me from the heart of the Grand Canyon. I pressed deeper. Every step echoed with an ancient presence, each footfall stirring centuries of dust and silence. There were alcoves along the passage, and within them, artifacts. Statues of gods long forgotten by the living world. Batet with her feline grace. Osiris, stoic and powerful. Gold leaf clung to their surfaces, flaking away at the slightest touch. Then came the first chamber. It opened suddenly, a vast circular hall supported by columns etched with symbols I could barely comprehend. At its center stood a great stone sarcophagus, sealed and untouched. Around it, the remains of old torches and faded cloth, fragments of some lost ritual. But it was not the treasures that stole my breath. It was the presence. Heavy, watching, a pressure behind the eyes, a whisper at the edge of hearing. I was not alone. And then I saw it, scratched into the far wall, beyond the reach of light. A single phrase in ancient Egyptian. Beware the guardians of the gate. The cave grew colder, the shadows deeper. My instincts screamed for retreat, but my heart, driven by wonder, by obsession, pulled me onward. There was more to find, more to understand. I had uncovered the edge of something vast, something terrible and beautiful all at once. And as I stepped into the next passage, the darkness seemed to close behind me like a door, sealing me within the legend. I moved carefully, deeper into the heart of the canyon's hidden world. The air was heavier now, damp and thick with the scent of ancient earth. My footsteps echoed off stone not shaped by nature, but by hands long dead. Chisels and fire had formed these corridors. Soon, I emerged into a new chamber, smaller than the last, but far more intricate. Its walls were entirely covered in symbols, layer upon layer of Egyptian hieroglyphs. Some were familiar: Ra, Isis, Anubis. Others were strange, corrupted, as if written in haste or by someone not entirely sure of their meaning. A single beam of sunlight pierced through a crack high above, illuminating a mural at the far end. It depicted a pharaoh, not one I recognized from any dynasty, seated upon a throne, holding a golden staff that ended in a serpent's head. At his feet knelt figures in supplication. Behind him, instead of the Nile or the pyramids, loomed the canyon cliffs themselves. The implication was staggering. Could this forgotten ruler have come here? Could the Grand Canyon have once been known to the ancient world? I approached the mural, brushing away centuries of grime, and there I found a cipher, a key scratched hurriedly into the stone. Kincaid had marked it in his journal, but I'd never understood its purpose until that moment. It was a translation guide, a map within language. Using it, I began to read. The mural told of a journey, a voyage across a vast sea, guided by stars and divine omen. The pharaoh, banished from his homeland for blasphemy or ambition, sought a land foretold in prophecy, a land of deep canyons and hidden spirits. Here, he built a sanctuary, not just for his treasure, but for forbidden knowledge. The more I read, the more the air changed. A sound, like a low hum, began to rise. The ground vibrated softly beneath my boots. My breath caught in my chest. I turned and saw that the shadows had moved. And in those shadows, eyes. Dozens. Watching. Glinting with a pale, unnatural light. I didn't run. Not then. Instead, I backed toward the center of the chamber, raising my lantern. The symbols began to glow faintly, one by one, as if reacting to my presence. The humming grew louder, became a chant without voices. And then the floor beneath the mural shifted. Stone slid against stone, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending even deeper. I knew I had no choice. Whatever secrets this pharaoh had buried, whatever power he had sealed away, it was waiting. Not just for anyone. It was waiting for me. As I descended the staircase, every instinct in me screamed caution. The walls trembled with quiet whispers, though no wind moved through the space. It felt like walking into a mausoleum of gods, each step a transgression, each breath a borrowed privilege. The deeper I went, the more it felt as though I had crossed into a place unbound by the laws of time. Eventually, the stairs ended in a narrow antechamber, and in its center, an altar, no taller than my knee, adorned with fresh-looking petals and a black stone bowl filled with a thick, dark liquid. The scent was coppery, old blood. The symbols here were different, less structured, more frantic. They spiraled, looping across the walls as if painted in haste by a hand gripped with madness. Images of jackals tearing through the souls of the dead, eyes gouged from faces, men bound in shadow. It was here that the whispers became voices. They slithered through the air like smoke, not in English, nor Egyptian, but in something older, darker. Yet I understood. Or rather, I felt the meaning. Warnings, regret, screams turned into psalms. In the center of the chamber stood a statue, an enormous jackal-headed god, Anubis. Unlike the others, this one was not static. Its arms were jointed, carved from some metal too dark to be bronze, too cold to be stone. As I passed, I felt its eyes follow me, felt its judgment. Then something changed. The walls themselves seemed to shift. What was once a hallway became a mirrored gallery. I saw myself in those reflections, but not as I was. In one, my eyes were sunken, my face pallid. In another, my flesh was covered in glyphs glowing with red fire. And then, one reflection blinked. That was not me. Panic clawed at the edge of my reason. I closed my eyes, steadied my breath, and moved forward. I was no longer sure of my path. The ground sloped sharply, and the walls pulsed like a beating heart. And then, the carvings returned. A story etched in sequential panels, like a sacred scripture. It showed the banished pharaoh kneeling before Anubis, offering a sealed urn. Around him stood beings not quite human. Their bodies were thin, elongated. Their heads like birds, serpents, stars. Together, they opened the urn, and from it poured shadows that blanketed the land. Creatures, Curses. Knowledge not meant for man. The pharaoh smiled as he disappeared into darkness. I stumbled back, my breath ragged. What had he unleashed here? Then a sound broke the silence, a distant grinding of stone, deliberate and slow. Something else had awakened. A doorway now stood open behind the statue of Anubis. Inside, only blackness. But I stepped through. I had to. If the previous chambers whispered, this one sang. Not in joy, but with a deep harmonic resonance that hummed within my bones. I approached slowly, every movement echoing too loudly. The tablet stood on a pillar of marble etched with constellations I did not recognize. The tablet itself was impossible. Polished black stone, smooth as glass, humming with a quiet energy. And upon it, a language I had never seen, yet understood in glimpses, as though part of me had always known it. Symbols that danced as I watched. Some depicted events, others, ideas, principles. This was no mere record. It was a contract, a pact between the pharaoh and the first watchers, beings not of Egypt, nor of earth, but of the void between stars. They had come to him with gifts, knowledge of binding and of becoming, the secrets of life after death, not as spirit, but as force, as will. And in return, the pharaoh had given them the canyon, not just the land, but its spirit, its silence, its blood. As I laid my hand upon the stone, a vision overwhelmed me. I saw a fleet, massive ships gliding across black waters. I saw a city built in the canyon's depths, glowing with fire that burned without fuel. I saw experiments, rituals, lives twisted into purpose. And I saw the tablet buried, sealed away with the guardians bound to protect it for eternity. The vision receded, leaving me breathless. But the tablet had changed. Now, it bore a new set of symbols. A warning that should the pact be broken, should the sanctuary be found by uninitiated hands, the guardians would rise. The knowledge would be reclaimed, and the world would remember what it tried so long to forget. And then, beneath my feet, the stone began to shift once more. A door opened, and I, driven by awe and terror alike, stepped through. Beyond the shifting stone door, I emerged into a space so vast I could barely grasp its scale. It was a city, carved into the living rock of the canyon. Towers spiraled upward, vanishing into the darkness above. Streets glowed faintly with a network of ancient symbols, and from somewhere deep within, I heard the pulse of something still alive. Bridges stretched between columns of obsidian, and buildings bore facades not of Egyptian or Native American design, but of a style wholly alien, an angular grace that seemed to resist gravity itself. The city was dead, and yet I felt eyes on me from every direction. I wandered through it cautiously, lantern raised. The walls bore murals, but these were not hieroglyphs. They were living memories etched into stone. One mural showed the arrival of the Watchers, descending like fire through the canyon sky. Another depicted men transformed, elongated limbs, strange heads, wrapped in blue flame. A third showed the pharaoh, his flesh melting away as he stepped into a beam of starlight. Every building seemed to hum with power. I came upon a courtyard where the ground was glass, and beneath it, rivers of molten energy flowed like veins through the city's heart. Above it stood a statue of the pharaoh, taller than any pyramid, his arms raised, not in welcome, but in command. And then I found the amphitheater. It sat at the city's core, circular and vast. The stone benches were cracked with age, but at the center stood an obelisk covered in golden inlay. I approached it, and as I touched its base, a surge of energy knocked me backward. Visions came in fragments. A city built to honor a pact. A civilization ruled by fear and wonder. An army of guardians birthed from the canyon's own walls. A celestial alignment, and the promise of return. I awoke on the stone floor, gasping. The obelisk glowed faintly, and far above, I heard movement. Something had been watching. Something was descending. Drawn by instinct, or perhaps by design, I followed the light. The tunnel led to a chamber unlike any I'd ever seen. Gold gleamed from every corner. Shields, weapons, jewelry, statues of gods with rubies for eyes and sapphire tears. It was a dragon's hoard, a king's ransom, a museum of cosmic decadence. At its center sat a throne carved from obsidian and adorned with gold serpents. Resting upon it was not a man, but the shadow of one. A perfectly preserved mummy, still crowned, still clutching a staff. Its face was hidden beneath a golden mask shaped like a jackal. This was him, the Pharaoh of the canyon. As I stepped forward, torches lit themselves in sequence along the walls. A mechanical click echoed behind me. The door sealed. Then, the mummy stirred. Its head tilted, just slightly. The mask caught the firelight and seemed to shimmer. The golden chamber was not a tomb. It was a throne room, and I was the intruder. The ground trembled. Gold coins danced across the floor. From the far corners of the room, stone began to crack and fall away, revealing figures, the guardians. Tall, lean, wrapped in ancient armor. Their eyes glowed like the obelisk. I knew I couldn't fight, but perhaps I could speak. I held the journal aloft, the same one Kincaid had once carried. The symbols on its cover began to glow. The guardians halted. One approached and touched the book. A deep, resonant voice echoed through my mind, not in words, but in understanding. You hold the memory of the pact. Speak the truth, and you may pass. I opened the book and began to read. My voice became not just a recitation, but a key. As I read the journal, the chamber around me transformed. Time bent. The past bled into the present. I saw what Kincaid had seen, and more. The Pharaoh, once a man of vision, had welcomed the Watchers in secret. He saw in them salvation, immortality, but the cost was steep. He traded not just land, but bloodlines, sacrifices, souls. The Watchers gave technology, wisdom, and weapons that bent the fabric of time. The city flourished, but not for long. A rebellion rose. Priests who feared the Watchers. Warriors who saw what the Pharaoh had become. A battle was fought within the canyon. The city fell. The guardians sealed it. The Pharaoh, entombed within his throne room, waited. For what? Even he did not know. Kincaid had found all this. He tried to bring it to light, but the guardians stopped him. He escaped, barely, left behind everything, including his mind. Now, I had followed his path, and I stood where he once stood, with the truth burning in my veins. But unlike him, I would not flee. Through a final archway lay the portal. Not just a passage, but a memory in stone and light. A gate built to connect two worlds, Egypt and this sacred canyon. The Pharaoh had believed in returning. Not reincarnation, but restoration. The chamber pulsed with energy. A ring of glyphs began to rotate. The constellations aligned. And at the center, a pool of water shimmered, clear as glass, yet deep as the cosmos. Surrounding the pool were stone plinths etched with names in both ancient Egyptian and the strange language of the Watchers. This was not merely a gateway. It was a registry, a record of those who had passed through before. To one side, I found a collection of artifacts laid in careful formation. Scrolls sealed in crystal tubes, a golden ankh mounted on a stone staff, and a headdress unlike any I had seen, woven from feathers that shimmered like starlight. Offerings, keys, tools for the journey? I reached toward the pool, and the water responded, ripples flowing outward, casting visions of the Nile as it might have looked millennia ago. Great temples gleamed, powered not by fire or slaves, but by resonance and energy. And behind it all, I saw the shadow of the canyon itself. Somehow, the connection between these worlds was older than either civilization. A voice echoed, "The pact must be honored. The gate must remain sealed or open anew." I stood at the edge of two realities. I could return, seal the path, let history forget. But the journal in my hands, glowing now with that same eerie light, pulsed with urgency. This was why I had come, not just to find truth, but to pass through it. I looked once more at the canyon I had known, the earth beneath, the sky above, all I had ever understood of reality. And then, I stepped into the water. The sensation was not of wetness, but of weightlessness, of every atom unraveling and reforming. I felt myself dissolve and become. There are no gods, only beings so far beyond us they wear the title as a mask. They showed me Earth, not as it is, but as it was and might yet be. They showed me civilizations built, then buried. Truths suppressed for fear they'd shatter the fragile myths of empire. The canyon was not a refuge. It was a vault, a hatchery of sorts, where ideas, knowledge, and power were stored until the right minds could wield them. The Watchers, these architects of memory, explained without speech. Their presence alone unveiled understanding. They were not malevolent. nor benevolent. They were custodians of the cosmic rhythm, weaving time like thread. I was shown the evolution of humanity across thousands of timelines. In some, we reached for the stars. In others, we destroyed ourselves with the very truths I now held. The balance was fragile. The secret of immortality, of resurrection, of ascension, was never meant to be free. And yet, they had given it. To one man, one pharaoh. I understood now that the pact was not broken. It was paused, waiting for the one who would not run, who would carry memory forward. I awoke outside the cave, the journal in hand. The sun rose over Grand Canyon. The wind whispered. I should have felt alone, but I was not. I carried voices now. Symbols burned into my mind. A map of stars tattooed on my soul, and a purpose not yet clear. The world would never know what I had seen, but I would remember. And someday, someone else would find it, and the pact would begin anew.